Fresh Foam More version 3 represents pretty much everything I don't like in a running shoe. It's puffy, it's heavy, and it's just so big. So why do I like it so much? Let's take these shoes for a run and then talk about the Fresh Foam More version 3 after 100 miles. .68 miles, 9 minutes, 24 seconds per mile, and 140 beats per minute today, taking the Fresh Foam More version 3 out for a run along the lakefront. Now, before I tell you about how this shoe has done over the last 100 miles, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that was sent to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, they're not paying me to make this video. No one's paying me to make this video or to use the shoe, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Fresh Foam More version 3. Let's go over some specs first. This is a tall shoe. It is 38 millimeters of stack height in the heel with a 4 millimeter drop, giving us 34 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. And that midsole is nothing but Fresh Foam X. And there's just so much of it because not only is this shoe tall, it's also a very wide shoe. You're landing on just a lot of shoe underfoot, which is going to help you with some stability without having to add any stability elements to the shoe. There's also a pretty aggressive rocker up front, which means that just change the geometry of the shoe. And it kind of makes it feel like you're stepping off the edge of a stair as you're going through your foot strike. And so like once you get to kind of this point, the heel picks up really quick, which helps when you're dealing with a shoe that's kind of like this big compared to other running shoes of the same size. On the outsole, there is a decent amount of rubber, but it's kind of strategically placed all over the place. There's still some grooves in the rubber and also in the foam itself, which is going to help you be able to bend this shoe and keep it from feeling extra stiff with all that extra stack height and with all that foam that's in this midsole. Moving to the upper, that's where the more really goes crazy. We start out in the front of the shoe with a very flexible, breathable mesh up here. It's very comfortable, but the further back you go in the shoe, the crazier it gets. We start getting a lot of padding in the tongue. There's just a lot of textures that are going on in here, and surrounding each side of this foot cage, the material seems to be taking on an additional layer of puffiness, and it loses all of the mesh ventilation that's in here as well. Moving further back, we're getting even more padding as we get to around this heel collar. Even the Achilles flare back here has a decent amount of padding in it as well. In terms of structure in the ankle, there's a lot of it. It's not the most rigid of heel cups, but there is a heel cup back here, and it's reinforced with this kind of honeycomb pattern material that's in the back, and it's flanked by these waves or these rails of foam that kind of comes up here to not only make the shoe look even taller than it actually is, but also it serves as kind of like rails or a cup for your heel to sit inside to further aid with stability back here. Altogether, this entire shoe with all its different layers and elements and textures comes in at a pretty heavy weight, lightweight when you think about it, but heavy in the general sense of 10.8 ounces and 306 grams. So what has it been like to run with this shoe over the last 100 miles? It is an absolutely comfortable shoe. There is a lot of stuff going on in here, but they're really making it work. Let's focus on the midsole first. The midsole, I think, has like two main sensations to it. The first is that it is comfortable. There is a squish and a very like slow squish, not like a super quick squish like you might see in some other super foams that you see in the marathon racing shoes, but there is a squish in here, a comfortable squish. almost like you're stepping into memory foam, but it's not like you're getting stuck in it either. It's not quicksand because there is a bounce to this Fresh Foam X foam too. I think it's a rubberized material, so there is a foam that's to it, but there's a little bit of rubber in it as well that gives it that little bit of extra bounce, makes it a little bit more lively than any other shoe that you've seen that is kind of like of this size and kind of dimension. So it is both as comfortable as you would expect from a shoe that looks like this, but also a little bit more lively than you would expect as well. Also helping that are the grooves that are cut into the shoe that help make it a little bit easier to bend, and also that rocker that we talked about up front that helps keep things moving pretty fluidly as you're going through that foot strike. I've been using this shoe for my everyday runs and for my easier long runs, or I've been using it like I used it today as a recovery shoe, just a nice and easy shoe where I didn't really care about how fast I was going. I just want to get out there, get the legs moving, get the blood flowing to help myself recover from the hard workout that I had the day before. That is kind of my favorite way to use a shoe just because it is so comfortable, but it also doesn't feel like I'm carrying weights around as I'm running in the shoe. And I'd say over the last 100 miles, the performance of this shoe has been very, very consistent. I don't feel like there's been any dramatic change from the moment it comes out of the box till now. The only thing that I would say is that, if anything, I think that the soft parts, there's like that soft cushiony part and then there's a bouncy part. I feel like the soft part has gotten even softer. It's kind of like gotten more kind of comfortable as the miles go on, which is exactly what I would want in terms of performance in a shoe like this over the course of several months. And I think that this shoe is going to easily have a lot of durability into it as well. I would expect that this shoe is going to get you several hundred miles of wear. And for me, I usually think that that's about 300 miles is about average for the way that I run and the kinds of running that I do. And so I think that this can very easily get you to that 300 mile point and easily beyond in terms of how well this foam is behaving. But now let's also talk about the outsole as well, because that's also going to be an important part when we're talking about traction and long-term durability. Now, in terms of grip, the rubber has been behaving really well. There isn't a ton of it, but what there is, it's in very strategic locations, and I feel like that's been treating me really well in terms of being able to get through wet or potentially slippery conditions. And I also think it's doing a really good job of protecting this foam. The wear that I am seeing is probably about average. There's only one spot where I feel like the wear and tear on the outsole rubber is a little bit more than I would expect. And it's in one of the usual spots. This section here on kind of like the middle of the pads of the foot, just this one section, it feels like the rubber is wearing down just a little bit fast. And I'm not seeing it in the other main wear areas that I experience when I look at shoes from a long-term perspective, which is that side part of the heel. The rubber is doing really well in all those other areas. It's just that one spot that is wearing down a little bit faster than I would anticipate. But again, I think it's doing a great job. And even if the rubber kind of like fails quickly, the formulation of Fresh Foam X that they're using in this shoe is a ground contact formulation. So even if the rubber wears all the way to the bottom, you can still run directly on this midsole material. It's the same midsole material that they're using in, for example, the Beacon 3. And so there's almost no outsole rubber and you can run directly on the foam. That's the same thing that they're doing in this one. So in terms of durability and long-term usage, I really think you're gonna be able to get a lot of miles out of this shoe. Moving to the upper, it's holding up really well. I didn't love it in the hotter months because I just don't think it breathes all that well. I'm not sure it's a shoe that I would love to bring if I were indoors on a treadmill or if it's now summertime where you are. But for me here in Chicago, it's getting a lot colder and the warmth of that upper is very welcome and I'm enjoying the level of comfort that it's giving me. I do think it's puffier than it needs to be, and I think that's hopefully something that's going to change in this genre of max cushion shoes where like comfort has been equated with puffiness. I think that I would love to see that change and have it change from another strength that the shoe has, where comfort for me in a shoe like this, I would equate it with a good fit. And I feel like a lot of times with the big shoes, these max cushion shoes, it might be a little bit too narrow right here on the widest part of your foot, or maybe it's a little bit too low in terms of the volume above the toes. It might be a little bit too small. This shoe, I think, handles both of those areas really well. I think there's plenty of volume in the toe box, and the width of the shoe, I think, works really well for the use case of easy runs, long runs, and recovery runs. So I'm very much enjoying this shoe, I guess, despite the fact that it is just so puffy. So overall, I think that the Fresh Foam More version 3 is a real surprise. I am absolutely loving it. I've enjoyed it every single time that I've put it on. I love this as a recovery run shoe. I love it as a daily trainer, and I love it as a easy long run shoe where you just want to get out there, spend time on feet and be comfortable and aren't necessarily worrying about pace. I think this is a really great shoe to be able to reach for. So while it is a little bit more expensive than kind of like your regular everyday trainers, I do think that for the amount of durability that they've packed into this shoe and the amount of comfort that they packed into this shoe, I think that it's a pretty good value. I feel like it's worth the extra money to spend for this shoe if you're looking for something that's going to provide a little bit of extra cushion, if you're looking for something that's going to have a little bit of a wider platform for you to be landing on as you're running. I think the Fresh Foam More version 3 is something that I could very easily recommend to a lot of people. So if you have any questions about the Fresh Foam More version 3, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'd love to be able to talk to you in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?